Hi, Jay. Happy Friday and happy Halloween.
Hey, good to see you. Happy Halloween.
You as well, too. Yeah, I appreciate a little bit of the festiveness that we have with your co-pilot hat that you're wearing.
Hey, and isn't that like the cloak or the robe or the wizard's thing from your avatar?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, basically, I'm trying to embody the little the YouTube wizard that I have, the Viz Wiz that was nicknamed to me like, well, now it feels like 8, 9 years ago at this point.
Ah, awesome. Well, it looks good. I don't know if I keep this on for the whole session, but we'll see.
At least for a little bit. Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, I can always just flip my the hood back, I guess. Um,
Sure.
but I mean, it's I think this is your third time coming back
I
on the
think
show.
so.
Yeah, sometime
I
around
think
there.
so. Yeah, must have been the first time. Yeah.
Well, no, the first time was before Visual Calcs. I forget what the very
Yes.
first one that you came on for. Uh, yeah, can you remember? What were you working
We've
on? I guess when we first met, like that would have been like
composite models, maybe?
might have been composite. Yeah, it might have been composite modeling. Then eventually VisCalcs from a
Yes.
year-ish ago, and then now we get to talk about some of the new stuff getting related to DAX now, but all these new calendar features and functions and everything that we have available that's coming after that. So uh,
Yep. For sure.
yeah, we between you and Marco, I've managed to hit I think both halves of the coin of the new DAX features that came out at the not the summit, but the Vienna FabCon announcements. Yep, there you
Yes,
go.
correct. That's where we launched both of them. Originally, I was planning to have the calendars a little earlier, just to not have everything in all the eggs in one basket, basically, right? So I was thinking let's just try and launch the calendars in August and then do the UDFs in September with FabCon, but we hit a little snag with the calendars, and so we had to delay. So then it was both at once, which is fine. It worked out in the end. But I was originally planning to split them out on 2 months. Yeah,
Okay, I mean, so yeah, the timing ended up being more synced than you expected, I guess, due to some
yeah,
delays. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll be curious to know your thoughts, kind of between the two of them, and just like the community response to both of those once we dig into it. But as always with the streams, I think it's good to start with a little bit of a brief introduction, just to give a chance for people who maybe listening now or watching you for the first time later, kind of what you do, your role with Microsoft, and kind of how you're involved, like with the calendar and everything else, to kind of set the context.
Sure, of course. So I'm Jeroen. I go by Jay for everybody that doesn't speak any Dutch, which is, I think, the majority of everybody watching here. I am a principal product manager on the Power BI team, and I focus on a little programming language called DAX and related features. So Visual Calcs, as we already mentioned, is one of the things that I did, visual calculations, new functions in DAX, and then, yeah, the DAX UDFs that Marco already talked about in another live stream, and then the calendars as well. So, yeah, as a product manager, I get to decide what the feature should do, kind of what it should look like, those kind of things. But it's mostly like, why are we doing this, and what should it do? I'm not a software engineer. I work with software engineers that actually write the code, so they're responsible for, okay,
Yep.
great, Jay has ideas. How do we make that happen?
Well, and I think this year especially, I think it's probably been like the biggest year for DAX in quite a long time, because there's increment, like there's iterative updates and nice to haves, but usually not like things that will largely redefine how new models get built in the future, type of
Right.
stuff. And I think both between the calendar table and UDFs, it's really going to change a significant number of patterns for net new models. Like it's, there's some that can go back and be updated, but I think I think really the telemetry, if I was to like look into a crystal ball, is in the next few years, I think there's going to be a lot more adoption as new stuff gets built, some on existing ones, but it's like if it's not broke, don't fix it type of a thing. The only reason to leverage either is, oh, if I can get an extra 20% optimization on query performance or something, absolutely go back. But otherwise, like, let's not touch and potentially cause the house of cards to collapse. So I will be really
No, for
curious to
sure.
know what new BPA rules and other stuff comes out
Right.
with these things as people start to solidify the, oh, do this, don't do that.
Right. No, you're absolutely on the money there.
Yep.
Unless you have a performance issue today with your time intelligence calculations, or unless you find yourself repeating logic over and over and over again, there's limited need to do either of the features, right? Calendars or UDFs. We're focused on calendars for here, but I think the rule still applies. It's like, hey, if you don't need a specific calendar, or you're not having issues with performance when it comes to time intelligence calculations on your standard Gregorian calendar, don't bother with switching, right? Like, don't touch it. It's not broken. It works.
Yeah.
However,
Exactly.
if you have specific needs for a different calendar, or you're not quite happy with how what we now call classic time intelligence works, well, hey, now there's a new thing you can play with that you can actually control and tweak and make do what exactly you want it to do. And that's what calendars are.
Well, they do, and I think to your point of both of these going up, applying some optimizations, or for UDFs moving things upstream and centralizing. I think there's going to be really good rollouts for both. I already know that I'm going to be like refactoring a bit the kind of the templatized calendar table that I nowadays stick with TMDL in all of my client files. But funny enough, like as one small anecdote with UDFs is, so I have a conversation with a client where they were trying to get like both a parameter selection of some stuff for some row context, plus like a URL that always shows the right URL at the right level, but you have to basically account for every combination of top to bottom with parent. And It's like, well, a UDF can fix that. Yes, but you have 5 levels to reconfigure. That's 120 potential combinations. I still need the code for all 120 if everything shows at the right level. And just moving it into a UDF, that's like sweeping your dirt under the rug. Like the technical
it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, like, yes, your function is going to be just the name, but somebody still has to manage the code in the UDF. Like that's not a magic wand solution. So
well,
I
unless you need that same code over and over again in different locations, right?
Yeah.
Then yes, but otherwise, if it's just used in one measure, then no, absolutely not.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it doesn't make writing the UDF any less complex than the UDF versus that. That was my thing. Is like I would really not like to have to be the person to manage a 300 line, 400 line DAX measure. They shouldn't be that long. So yeah, like yes,
no.
If you ever reference it in a self-service report, it will be a single line for that function. But
yes,
I still have a lot of technical debt for
complexity is still
that.
somewhere, right? The complexity is still somewhere. It still needs to be written. It still needs to be maintained. So it's not like, hey, magically that disappeared, right? And the same goes for calendars, right?
Yeah.
With calendars is we give you way more control, but with way more control, way more flexibility also comes way more responsibility, right? So we are kind of like doing away with like the built-in assumptions that Power BI as a product has made over 10 years about what your calendar looks like, because it really only actually worked for a Gregorian or a shifted Gregorian calendar, like a fiscal year that starts on the 1st of July, for example, not for anything else. So if you had a calendar that was 13 months, or a retail calendar like a 454 calendar that works with weeks, you were out of luck, and you were like, okay, I cannot really use any of the built-in time intelligence functions, because we had a built-in understanding that no, the year is 4 quarters, it's 12 months, all months are between 28 and 31 days, and that's it, right? So now with calendars, we're getting rid of all of that, which gives you way more flexibility to do whatever you want, but it still means, well, you're getting more flexibility. There's less guardrails. That means you have to manage the guardrails yourself. So it's an effect of that is putting more of the work back onto you.
Yeah, but it's double-edged sword, right? When it comes to that, you're giving more of a sandbox, but with proper configuration. And again, I'll mention the thing that I love about TMDL is the getting existing patterns that have been configured, sorted, hierarchied, foldered, all that is so easy now. Like I did a video that I might link to later in the comments here, where like there's 5 really cool things with TMDL, but just drag and drop in a table with everything and just instant moving it to any new workbook for these custom calendar tables. You can easily centralize it. And before you had to start with that as a starter file. Otherwise you would have to like move the query, like it would take you 30 minutes to set up everything. So I love this kind of stuff, but the transferability without actually having to go to the code, like editing the files direct. You can just use TMDL for that. So I think the templatizing across your ecosystem we're using something like semantic link to potentially even add that to systematically to a bunch of other models is going to be really easy as long as you have that one developer who can configure this properly.
Well, and that's exactly what I mean. Like, it's great, but you still need to do it, right? So that's where the parallel with the UDF comes back in and go like, you still need to manage all of it. So yeah, it's awesome. You get a lot of flexibility, but hey, you still need to do all this stuff. It's not like some magic bullet. In fact, you could actually turn it the other way and say we have less of a silver bullet now in the product, because you used to just be able to say, hey, I got a calendar. As long as you were in a Gregorian or shifted Gregorian time, it was fine, right? And Power BI would do it. Now you go like, well, no, I can do whatever. So that basically means I also have to configure whatever I wanted. So yeah.
Exactly. And I want to do one, before we switch to your screen, one shout out just from this guy on the fact that I didn't realize your book, did it just come out recently for your visual calcs?
Yeah, we wrote a book. Yeah, it's nuts. It's been a lot of work, but we wrote a book about visual calculations, and we filled 352 pages on it. I cannot believe we did it. But yeah, if you really want to learn everything there is to know about like how visual calculations actually work, why they work that way, great examples also from the community, like Dr. Visual Calcs, Eric Svensson, and Injay Park, and I'm gonna butcher his name, Fomwy, sorry, Fomwy. Anyway, and I'm not even gonna try his last name. Sorry.
Sure.
But yeah, they gracefully allowed us to like show their examples, the stuff they built. Nice. And then we have a complete tutorial in there to go like, hey, if you want this, here's how you do it. So for example, how do you do a bullet chart using a visual calc? How do you do a box plot using just visual calculations instead of relying on a custom visual? So pretty cool stuff.
Oh yeah, I love them for visuals, and honestly, I just did this with the client. Is separating some of the layers of comparatives. So a client had like a billion rows, and I think they had a current, a comparative, a budget, but then a VAR and a VAR percentage, and like those were all measures against that. So like you can split to your comparatives to just A divided by B, A minus B in the visual itself. So it speeds up the visual less that the model's doing. So for performance optimization, it can actually be really useful against large data sets once you have the data that needs to be compared already in the visual. Like I feel like most of the time people talk about the cool visual stuff that you can do for it, like especially with NJ.
Sure.
But yeah, the secondary nice benefit is large data set optimizations.
Yeah, and for me it was actually the reverse. Like I was surprised by what kind of cool visual tricks you could do with visual calcs. That's not what I intended. I know it was possible, but like the extent that people like Injay and Eric and Fomwy take it, it's just mind-boggling to me. And I go like, what is this? Is this really just a visual calc and then tweaking? I'm like, really?
Right.
Like, how did you do this?
When you get through like 10 visual calcs that are hidden in something, it's like at least the technical debt of like nobody would ever practically usually do that in the model, but already you can shotgun as many as you want because you can copy this over. So yeah.
So I mean, and if the client really wants a box plot and they don't have a like custom visual that they want to use, or they don't want to, or whatever, great, you can do it. You can do it now, and it's great. So anyway, yes, complete sidetrack, but yes, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, we have the book out, so go buy. And if I ever meet you in person, I'll sign it for you.
And if you're ready to flip over to your screen, I'll also make sure to drop a link to the book itself. But ready to kick off the calendar discussion? Excellent.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, that's what we're here for, no?
There you go.
Okay, so let's talk about calendars. So really, what I before we get into the actual calendars, we should kind of revisit what we had before, right? So previously, how Power BI used to do time intelligence is you would give us a date table, right, which had to be a continuous list of dates, no gaps. So if you had a store that was closed on the weekends, let's say you were closed on Sunday, you would still have that Sunday in there, even though you didn't have any records that was going to match that Sunday. That requirement of having a date table is still there. You don't longer have to have like continuous set of dates. It can have gaps now. We'll handle that. But you will still have to have a date table. So this feature doesn't magically give you a date table. You still are expected to build that. However you want to do it, right? You can do that using TMDL. You can do it using DAX. You can do that using M. External tools like Bravo. Other tools exist. Templates that you might have, as we were saying in the intro when we were just chatting. It's like, hey, I have this template that I just use every single time. Right, great. However you get it, you still need a date table. And then on top of that, what we used to do is just say, hey, whenever you write something like a DAX function like total year to date, we are going to look at the date table and interpret that as a Gregorian calendar. So as if it has 12 months, assuming the 12 months run from January to December, and every month is between 28 and 31 days. So when you say, I do a quarter move back or a month move back, we understand what that means in the context of a Gregorian calendar. Okay, great. However, not all calendars are Gregorian in the world. There's lots of industries and lots of parts of the world where they don't use a Gregorian calendar. There's a big industry called manufacturing and retail. They don't use a Gregorian calendar. They use what they call a 445 or a 454 or a 544 calendar, named after the pattern of weeks, for example. So here you see an example on the screen here. Let me know if it's too small to see, actually, but it's like, you can see, you don't need to look at all the detailed numbers, but you can see like there's 4 lines here, and there's 5 lines in the next, and then 4 again, and then 4 again, and then 5, and then 4. So this is basically dividing up the year in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks. Therefore, this is a 454 calendar. But if you look closely, in this calendar, 2024 only starts on the 4th of January. So January 2024 doesn't start on the 1st. No, it starts on the 4th in this calendar, right? So that's immediately already negating all the rules that a Gregorian calendar has. So these calendars exist, which don't match the regular Gregorian calendar. And as Power BI as a tool, we need to cater for all of these kind of calendars. And this is the simplest example, right? There's also like 13 months calendars out there. There's religious calendars that don't even like have I heard about a calendar that has 26 months. There's also a calendar that is an international calendar, which makes sure actually that every day is on the exact day every date is on the exact day every year. So I don't know.
So that one, I was trying to look up the name of it, but there is one where it is every month has the same number of days. Like they parsed it all out where it is perfectly symmetrical. Like, man, that sounds really nice. There is no variations every year. Yeah.
No, exactly. So Reed, do you know which day you were born?
Honestly, no idea. Yeah. Okay. Do you?
So I know it was on a Saturday.
Okay.
And I only learned that because I was working with this stuff and I looked it up. So I was born on a Saturday. But of course, my birthday is not always on a Saturday because we're in a Gregorian calendar. If we all were in the international calendar, as it's called, then I would know that the 9th of April, which is my birthday, is always going to be on a Saturday. Always.
Yeah.
And how did they do that? They introduced the 13th month called Sol, which sits between July and August, if I'm not mistaken, or June or July. One of the
that's
two.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, once you adopt those kind of calendars that are not Gregorian, all of the stuff that Power BI has in terms of time intelligence breaks. Because we have this built-in notion that you're working with a Gregorian calendar, which consists of 12 months, 4 quarters, and 365 or 366 days, and every month is between 28 and 31 days. And then we also don't do any weeks, because weeks don't necessarily neatly line up to months. So let's forget about them, right? That's essentially the state we were in. And now with calendars, all of that is gone. So we basically give you full flexibility to define the date table as you wish, and then tell us, hey, this is what constitutes a year in my context, in my business case, in my date table. This is what constitutes a month in my date table. So if your date table happens to be an international calendar with 13 months, then great, we work with 13 months. If you have a 454 like here on the screen, great, then we work with 454, and then we understand that going 1 month back means working with 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, and figuring that pattern out. So you tell us exactly what you want, and that's what calendars allow you to do.
And I remember with a lot of the... That's fine. I'll just flip back my hoodie. There you go. Um, I was I remembered like having to look up these patterns back in the day with Marco and others, where like anything that requires custom periods to look up in the past, you'd need potentially some extra tables or something connected to your calendar table. And
Yes.
it's always a Pandora's box. Like every time I've ever done a video on anything time intelligence, there is the like, this is cool, but what about if I could do X? Uh, and
Right.
and then you do a second video and like, oh well, okay, yeah, X is cool, but what if I could do Y? And it is like, all right, like there's going to be a never ending series of questions. At some point, I gotta
Yeah.
like stop. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what we aim to do with calendars is say, hey, you now are in control. If you want to define a year that consists of 48 weeks and you want 1/4 for the whole year, go for it, right? So if you want us to do a quarter shift back and you want that to mean you go exactly 1 year back for whatever reason, you can do it. Who are we to tell you that your year should have 4 quarters, right? Who are we to tell you that your year should have 12 months? If you want 26 months, go for it.
I would like 365 months with 1 day each. Can I do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
You would be crazy. I would call it crazy, but you could. I mean, because your DAX would be weird, right? Because then 365 months with 1 day each, then basically means going back 1 month, and so total year, date add minus 1 month, date add minus 1/4, and date add minus 1 year start meaning exactly the same thing.
The only difference between the 1 year, month to date and quarter to date, and previous month, previous quarter, a previous quarter would be 3 days. Yeah,
yes.
but the month to date would go away. It's the same thing.
Hey, yeah. If you wanted it, you could. Now,
that's true. Yeah,
that's the beauty of it, right? So if you have a reason to do this because it's a religious thing in the context, or the country you work with has a different idea of like how things work than the standard Gregorian calendar, or your industry or your company or whatever, you can now define all of it. So that's basically what calendars allow you to do. So let me just show you an example here. I have a massive date table because you still need that date table, right? Let me actually show my date table. It would be good. You still need the date table. Right? We're not giving you a date table. So you're still responsible for writing your own date table. Now I have this massive date table here because this is my test set to just put calendars through the paces. So this includes basically every calendar I could dream up, which includes like all the 454, all the various types that we have there, the 454, 445, 544, shifted Gregorian calendars with like fiscal calendars shifting starting in the 1st of July, regular Gregorian calendar, the international calendar is in here. So it's basically all calendars I could come up with. So hopefully your date table is not going to be this wide in your scenario. Yeah. But basically the idea is you define this date table, you load it with data that starts from wherever you want to begin your counting of time until the end, right? So in this case, I started on January 8th of 2024, and that maps then to year 2024. It maps to quarter of year 1. It maps to month of year 1 in the Gregorian calendar, but it might map to month 7 in the fiscal calendar, right? So basically all of these columns allow you to dictate exactly like, hey, you tell us with this, you say, okay, month of year, this is the first month in the Gregorian year. But if we look, for example, at the fiscal month, you'll see that this is actually month 7 in 2024, January, right? And if you look at the ISO month, let's see, month, I'm just going to search for this one, month of year, or month ISO, you'll see that's actually 2024, month 1 again, right? So you basically have all of this data. This is what you need to do still. But it gives you full flexibility to define how you want to divide your year up, when you want your months, your quarters, your weeks to start. Great. So we have this. You load this table and everything is fine. Cool. So now, once this table is loaded, because it's right over here, right? You can see all of this. You go and say, okay, I need to tell Power BI that this is my date table. And I need to tell it that I want to work with calendars on this. So you go in here, you either use the right click option or you use the table tools and you use calendar options over here at the top. Oh, my video image is on top of that. But anyway, the right click will work.
So a quick question for you, because outside of it basically just saying it does optimizations in the back end, if you were describing like, a paragraph or less, like outside of setting up these custom ranges, like why would you tell a customer why they should always set that for any calendar table they have in their model? Like what's the the primary benefits of doing this from any like model optimizations that it just knows now that it recognizes this as a calendar table?
Well, without doing this, you
Yep.
cannot use the time intelligence functions against them, right? So your
Yep.
time intelligence functions, you would still need to tell us, hey, I want to use this time intelligence function against this calendar, right? So
Yep.
you need to tell us that. So same as you used to mark your table as your date table as a date table for the time
Yep.
intelligence functions to work, you need to do the same thing. But now
Yep.
it's slightly different because now you go and say, hey, in my calendar options, I can define multiple calendars on this table, right? So in my specific example, I have a Gregorian, I have a fiscal, I have a retail, I have
Yep.
all the other calendars that you might imagine. Hopefully, in your scenario, you might end up with maybe 2 or 3. Depends on what you want to do, right? You might have like a Gregorian calendar, you might have a fiscal calendar, you might also have your retail calendar, right? The 454 pattern again. So you can also easily define multiple calendars here. So essentially, this kind of replaces the Marcus date table. Marcus date table is still here, by the way, if you really need it. It's only needed now for very specific scenarios. One that involves Excel pivot tables where you want to set date filters on that. Using Excel pivot tables, you still need to mark it as a date table. Otherwise, you don't need to do this anymore. So after
Excellent.
you define your table, you go and define your calendars. So how you do this is you select a calendar, you give it a name. If I can actually type. And then we're wiring up what we call categories or time units, as we sometimes call as colloquial not in our UI and in our documentation. You might find them somewhere. We call them time units internally, but we call them categories here. So essentially what you're doing here is setting up metadata. So you're mapping your columns in your date table to the right label to tell us, hey, this is what I mean when I refer to year. So whenever I use, for example, total year to date, or do a year-based shift with date add -1 year, this is the column I want you to shift over. That's what you're telling us here. So you are expected to have at least one category. Most of the time it's going to be year, and you're going to select a primary column. Now this primary column will give you the whole list of all the columns in the date table that you can choose from. You can pick whatever, right? I can just create a fiscal calendar here by looking for my fiscal year and picking that, right? So you need to have a primary column for each category. Optionally, you can also have associated columns, which are like labels, which basically means if I use this in my visual, we will know still what is the actual column you want to use to do the counting on, which is the fiscal calendar, the fiscal year. You define more categories like this. So we have loads of categories. Quarters, weeks, days. We also have like the day off, the X of Y, right? So if you don't want to do the full quarter, including the year, you can say, hey, for example, this field is just the, come on, why is it not? There we go. This field is just a quarter. So if I have a quarter of year, I don't necessarily know exactly which quarter we're talking about because it's just telling me it's the first quarter of a year. So it still needs extra context to know exactly which quarter of which year we're talking about, right? So you map this all. You basically, you don't need to do all of these. You can do whatever you need. If you don't need week-based calculations, then don't define them, right? If you don't need quarters, then don't define them. If you don't have them in the data table, you don't have to define them. You need to have one level at least. And so you basically go in, you pick what you need. You say, okay, I'm going to do quarter of year, right? So this is going to be my fiscal quarter of year. And we also check what you did, because if you did this without a fiscal year, then just the number of quarter of year is not enough, right? As I said, it just says it's the first quarter. It doesn't say the first quarter of which year. So as soon as I don't provide enough information, we'll actually tell you, hey, we cannot do this kind of calculation now because you need to tell us how this actually maps into the year, what you think, right? So, hey, we're missing information here.
So there's, basically from a standard structure there, you can never provide a child that would require a parent normally. So, yep.
Yeah. So you go through this, you define all of this, and you see all the categories here, right? Now, if you want to learn more about like exactly the values that we expect or the kind of examples of the data, and this UI is subject to change. We're trying to like improve it. Our documentation actually lists all the values and all the names that we use here in the UI, and you can see like what we expect and also what the cardinality relationship between any of these columns is versus another column that we expect. So for example, we expect there to be a one-to-one mapping between a associated column and a primary column, just to give you a simple example. Anyway, so you define all of this. You can validate it here if you want. Then we'll just check all the relationships and indeed if they exist. I'll close without saving to just show you a finished example. Here's, for example, my fiscal calendar, right? It just switches, it just tags the metadata on the primary columns to say, hey, when I mean to do a quarter-based calculation in my fiscal calendar, this is the column I want you to talk about, and this is the column I want you to use to perform the calculations with. So when I say date add -1 quarter in the fiscal calendar, I want you to use the fiscal quarter and perform the time shift over that column.
Yep.
That's essentially what a calendar is.
Yeah,
Mapping of
exactly.
metadata.
Yep.
And then you have multiple of those. You can have many, right? I have many here because I have lots of calendars in my date table. Hopefully in real life scenarios, you end up with 1 or 2. Okay, great. So once you have those, you can then refer to those in your calculations. So when we go into our little measure writer here, let me just make this a bit bigger so it's readable. Hopefully this is big enough. So I can say, let me do a total year to date of, let's say, the sales, whatever, something. I have so many things in here. Just going to go total sales. And then I'm going to do a total year to date, not against the date. I'm going to do that against my fiscal calendar, right? So here you see a calendar here now with a little calendar icon. So I can now say, hey, give me a total year to date against my fiscal calendar. So as I commit this expression, what this will do is we'll calculate the total year to date value of the total sales measure in the context of the fiscal calendar. So you want that in a different calendar? Great. You go change it to wherever my mouse is, to your Gregorian calendar. Now it will calculate the same value, but now in Gregorian calendar. You want to do that in your retail 454? Well, now you have it in your retail 454. It is as simple as that.
And it will do when using the only, in my head of like traditional calendar columns, the only universal column that is agnostic to most of the periods is usually the date column. Everything above that starts to often get custom labeling. So this would work on that. So
Yes.
asking the question for like audience, let's assume you had like 5 different quarter columns, but if you defined all that in the logic, can you hide everything except for like a master like Q1 to generic quarter column? But this would allow the engine to like, you'd have 5 measures. And if you put any of those 5 measures against that like just generic Q1 column, what it would be retrieving in the back at a different set of dates. So you don't have to,
Yes.
yeah. So the measures are doing the logic. So you could hide most of your custom columns unless, I would think the one exception would be is if you needed a specific label, you want the label to be FQ1 or something.
Yes,
but if you had
exactly.
generic text labels, then you have one set of master quarter, month,
Yep.
and date, and then the rest would be switched. So you don't have to swap as much columns as you used to.
Nope.
Yep.
So yeah, exactly. And then the extra benefit of this, of course, is that even if you have just a Gregorian calendar, the performance of this will be better because since you now told us what a quarter and what a month and what a year means in your brain, we can actually do optimization. So dirty secret is for like the classic time intelligence, even if you do a total year to date, we always go back to the date level to perform all the calculations on. But now we can actually pre-aggregate stuff because we know, oh, the year contains of 4 quarters. So we just need to grab the value for 3 quarters and then figure out what is the value for the last couple of days in the most recent quarter, right? To do a total year to date. So we can actually pre-calculate the quarter values and be done quicker. So that's why it's also performance benefits if you just have Gregorian calendars.
So essentially previously it would only like use the key between the date and the fact that you get those and then roll it up to the labels because it's a generic filter otherwise where you're just saying like prior period of that. But to your point is like pre-aggregate first, then to like the whole set or whatever, flip back to the one period
Yep.
more optimal, probably against much larger data sets. So there in theory is some significant performance improvements on this for period comparisons, it sounds like.
Yes, for sure. So then you can also do a new function called total WTD, which of course stands for week to date, right? Which is a brand new function that we enabled now with the calendars. And you can also, I'm just going to show you a different example, right? I can also do a data add -1 week now, right? Oops, my bad. So I'm just going to break this for a second. So I'll just say week. I can now pick week as a time to shift with, right? I can now perform a week-based shift. However, your calendar needs to support the week. So this, while it looks good, won't work. Why? It's because, well, of course, I still need to calculate to shift this actually, but whatever. The calendar doesn't define a week period. So as soon as I try to execute this will not work because the calendar doesn't know what a week is. And I can actually demo that to you. If I, for example, do a week to date again, let me go back to this guy. Here's this guy. This is a total week to date on total sales on retail 454. This works. Why? Is because retail in my calendar actually has a week time unit, a week category defined. But as soon as I say, let me do this against my Gregorian, it will not work because this guy doesn't know what a week is. I'd never defined a structure of a week in my Gregorian calendar. So as soon as you do this, and this is really hard to read, I think, on the stream, but you will see that it says like, no, you can't do this because we lack information about what a week constitutes in a Gregorian calendar. You didn't tell us, so we're actually actively blocking you from doing this calculation instead of you just giving you some arbitrary results, trying to make the best of it.
So a quick question on that, because I honestly like thinking of a client scenario that I might even be able to help them a little bit with. So like with these date adds and a few other options. So even with a basic native calendar, if somebody's just wanting to do a current versus prior period comparison and they have like a slicer that just has a text of like quarter, a text of a month, and like they're picking custom ranges, usually like with 1 month at a time windows, whatever it is, that undefined will be slower than if you go and like, no, this is month, this is quarter and everything. And you said that would allow that date add, even with a standard Gregorian calendar, to do those egg roll-ups and in theory, like process that prior computer retrieval and comparison faster.
Yeah, but that will only make a difference on big data sets, right? Like if you have a smallish data set, you won't feel the difference.
Oh,
right?
of course, no. Like, I do again. Like, I'm just wanting to kind of emphasize the fact that I think there's a lot of really strong potential with people to leverage this for that aggregation part because I think it could easily and commonly slow down. Not even like large models, like models with maybe 50 to 500 million rows, if they're not optimized or the measures that are needing to be compared are already kind of inefficient, like it really quickly adds up. So I think this can provide some pretty quick, nearly code-free wins to like almost spend 30 minutes and your model could gain like 10-15% efficiency.
Yep. No, for sure. It's definitely worth checking out. But again, as we said in the beginning, if you don't have any issues, then why go and change it, right?
Oh, no, yeah. Like, sure, this is for the people who are like, who are struggling with, like, my model is slow out. Like, I do date comparatives, and it's killing my, like, maybe just poke around for 30 minutes and add a few of these settings. You might see some instant gains without even need to edit your base DAX measures, which is nice.
As much as I want people to use my new feature, and as a product manager, it's weird to give the advice to not use the feature, right? But don't. If you're happy with how it works now, you can do whatever you need. Don't use calendars, right?
I agree. Yeah, of course.
Cool. So we can dive deeper into like more advanced stuff here because we have like other tricks up our sleeve that we solved. I wanna talk about something called what we call time related for a second. So you have these columns that don't constitute anything really about time, right? It doesn't say, hey, this is a quarter or a month or a day or a week or a year, but it's something like this was a working day, or this was a special holiday, or this was a weekend day, or this was our financial stock keeping day. We closed the shop and we counted all the products we had in store. And for that reason, I want to handle those days specifically differently because I might want to include or might not want to include them in my calculation. Now, previously, if you had classic time intelligence, you would be on your own. Like you could not tell Power BI how to do this, how to manage this, how to handle this. You would have to write your own DAX measures to decide right there and then in the calculation, like, hey, this is how I want to treat the special days that I have here. Now with the calendar, you can actually mark columns as what we call time related. Let me just get rid of this big thing up here on the top. So if you have a column that is time related, like is working day, which is just a Boolean column, a Boolean saying false, true, true, false, etc. You can then decide to tag it in my calendar as time related. So then you say, hey, this calendar is special. This column is special. The is working day is special. I want to assign a special behavior to that, different from like the standard behavior of if it's just a label or whatever. And why is this important? Is because you can see it's a different behavior here. So I have multiple measures. This is just a total quantity, which is just a measure just so you can check the values, you can check the math. And then I have two types of measures. One is against a calendar that doesn't mark is working day as time related. So that's this one. Then the same measure against the calendar that does mark time is working day as time related. And the same thing again with two more measures, right? So the 1 year ago quantity will just use date add against the Gregorian calendar with -1 year, and then the 1 year ago quantity time related is the same thing, but then against a time related calendar. So that's a calendar that marks is working day as time related. Now the same goes for the full last year quarter. We have parallel period against the time related, or the parallel period against the Gregorian calendar. Now, why am I showing you all of this? Because if you look closely, you will see that the behavior is different, right? So 2025 is working day false. Total quantity is this number. The 1 year ago quantity is this value, 2025 -1 year, but only where the working day was false, we get that value. Okay, great. 1 year ago quantity time related doesn't change anything. So actually the date add function completely ignores this, and this is on purpose to have maximum flexibility. However, if you look closely, parallel period, you'll see there's a difference. So here, it's the same behavior as date add. Why? Well, it's a calendar that doesn't know anything about time related, so we'll just pick up the value from 1 year ago false, right? But this value is not the same as all the others. What this actually did is say, oh, working day was time related. Since you told it was time related, I'm going to clear the context on this. So I'm going to ignore it and say, what you actually meant is going back 1 year, regardless of what the working day was. So if working day was true or false, I don't care. I'm just going to sum all the values 1 year, because if you do the math real quick, this 532,152 is 177,620 plus 354,532.
Yep.
So it gives you maximum flexibility, right? You can decide to tag something as time related. If you do, parallel period and other functions, with all functions except for date add and same period last year, will honor that and clear the context on that. If you don't match it as time related, you don't map it as time related, it's fine, it will still work. You will just get the old behavior, which basically means this not only allows you to do what we call lateral shifts, right? Going on the same grain 1 year back, which is basically what data add allows you only to do, going on the same grain with the same context. In this case, working day is false, 1 year back is a lateral shift. But when you have time related, now you can do hierarchical shifts. And you go, no, I want to go 1 year back, and I want to move away from whatever I know about working day being true or false. I just want the total value of 1 year back. So you get way more flexibility that way.
I mean, it's essentially whether or not it's applying an all function, but only for the prior period that you're looking back at. Do you want like do you want 100% same context or partial context in the prior period? Yeah. Okay.
And previously you used to do that, all of that, like with a calculate and remove filters and write all of that yourself. Now all of that logic and kind of working of this is now built into the calendar itself. You can just refer to the calendar and trust that we will do all that context clearing for you. So you don't have to write it any longer. So if you need that behavior in many measures, great. You just refer to the calendar with the right setup and you're done. You don't need to remember to write to keep filters or remove filters. So that's just one example of like interesting stuff you could do with a calendar. I know this is pretty advanced and kind of out there, but it proves my point of like, this is highly flexible, but also means you have to manage all of this, or you have to be aware and know what you're doing, right?
Well, I think this to me comes into a conversation of what I refer to as like fair comparatives. When anything you're doing with dates is like, yes, you can compare two numbers, but is it a fair comparison with those? It's
Yep.
so I think this just gives people flexibility into helping to ensure the definition of that. Just
Yep.
because like to me as an example, comparing like average sales per working day is much fairer than comparing month over month. That's one of the crappiest comparisons that you can do if you're comparing February to March and other stuff
Yep.
like that. So all of this, I
Yep.
think, just gives visibility into ensuring that the proper windows are being compared, and transparency onto exactly what it is without having to debug the code.
And I think that's a great point. Is like previously we, as Power BI, we made those choices, and you could override us, but you had to override it if you wanted something else. Now it's up to you. We don't make that choice for you. If you like make the choice to have something different, you can, right? So you are now the master of that choice, and you are the one in control of deciding, yes, I want this thing to be treated differently, yes or no. Previously, we made all those goals, and it was just opaque to you and just had to live with it and then fix it after. Now you get to be in the driver's seat and go like, no, this is exactly what I want. So previously, we had like built-in notions that we thought we built in the product, and you had just to work around it, right? So that's basically the big difference here. The other one I want to call out, and you already kind of alluded to it with the month thing, is how do you deal with the fact that there's still many calendars out there that have varying month lengths, right? Of course, if you go into like a calendar that happens to chunk every year up in exactly the same size months, like 30 days every month, you don't have this problem. But many of the calendars, Gregorian, shifted Gregorian, but also retail calendars like the 454 still have to deal with the problem that a month is not just 28 days. It can also be 31 days, right? Or anywhere in between. So then,
I actually just written in advance of this, I did ask like GPT what like a fun calendar range for months would be, and it came up with a golden ratio one where it got bigger, and then it started shrinking. So 1 month is like 3 months, but yeah, it's like a nice little golden ratio accordion throughout that I might do a video on at some point, just to like, if you have a silly calendar like this that doesn't make sense, you can still do this against that and it will work intelligently.
Yeah. So with this new calendar stuff, you now are in control of exactly what you want here, right? So instead of, again, us deciding how we deal with this, which was really arbitrary, we give you the control. We have what we still think is a good default, right? But you can now decide exactly what you want. So let's just walk through an example. And the example I have here is it's working, shifting in months, because that's the easiest to understand example in a Gregorian calendar, right? So I'm sticking with Gregorian for now, but this applies to any of the calendars. But since Gregorian is so widespread, I'm sticking with that. And I'm shifting back from February to January, and I'm shifting back from March to February. Why did I pick those? Because if going back from February to January means going back from a shorter period to a longer period. January is always 31 days. February is always 28 or 29 days in Gregorian calendar. Depends on, if we have a leap year, yes or no. March is always 31 days, but if you shift back from March to February, you can shift back from 31 days to 28 days or 29 days, right? Now, you get into the meat of the matter, is how do you want to deal with the days that don't exist? For example, if I go back from, let's say, February 29th, what do you want that to mean? Because February 29th, well, that's March. Sorry, I need to go to February, actually. February 28th. Okay, that's a better example. Okay, so what does that mean, right? So let's say we are at, am I doing this correctly? Yes, February 27th. Let's take that example, right? February 27th, going back 1 month. Well, there is a day called January 27th that's existing, right? So I'm just going to give you that number. Great. But now let's do that for February 28th. February 28th in 2025 is the last day of that month. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to just pick the same value exactly 1 month back, aka January 28th? Great, we do that. That's this number. That's what we do here, which is a precise move. February 28th will always be mapped to January 28th. But February 28th is the last day of the month. So maybe you wanted us to extend towards whatever is the end of the period we're going to. So now you can say, hey, instead of exact mapping, I want you to go back to January 28th and then continue for the remaining of the days until January is over. So effectively, this would now map February 28th to January 28th all the way until January 31st.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, essentially what you do is you flatten out and extend for however many days in the previous month. You're just grabbing the end of month value to continuously compare it to until the other month runs out. Okay, yeah. So here's the other question, though, is like what? So if you want to go to February 28th and do 1 month prior, what about if you want to compare February 28th technically to the end of last month?
Well, you could, right? Because that is what this is. It's you will also get a new value, actually, and we haven't really shipped that, and it's actually a hint here. You will actually get that exact same behavior as well in the new the next update of this feature, where you will say, hey, instead of mapping to January 28th all the way to 31st, I want to say, no, February 28th was the last day of the month. I want to grab the last day of the month previous, so that's January 31st. So you get another option that actually will always map the last day of the month to the last day of the month. So that will mean you will grab, for February 28th, going back 1 month, will grab the value of January 31st.
So you always basically assume the start and the beginning periods are properly compared to similar start and end periods. Yeah.
Yes. Of course, if you have a leap year, then February 29th will start meaning the last day of the month.
Yep.
You see how this becomes confusing really quickly, but all the power is there. Now, we can also go the opposite way. If we go from a larger month, March, to February, we have the same problem, but in reverse. What do we do if, for example, I am in March 30th and I'm reverting back 1 month? Well, February 30th never exists in a Gregorian calendar. So what do you want us to do? So there's two options that we give you. You can either say, hey, whenever there's a value that I'm mapping to, a date that I'm mapping to that doesn't exist, give me a blank. So here, March 29th, 2025, 25 was not a leap year, therefore February 29th does not exist, therefore the result is blank. And of course, even if it was a leap year, going back 1 month from March 30th or March 31st is always going to be blank in a Gregorian calendar because there is no February 30th or 31st, at least not that I know. So, okay, great. Instead of us doing something, which actually is us as Power BI making a choice of what we would do here, you will get control. You can now tell us, whenever this happens and I go back to a smaller period, then just give me blanks for any of the values you couldn't find. Or the opposite, which is actually, I think, the classic behavior that we have with our classic time intelligence, where we made a choice for you, is like, no, if I'm shifting back from a period that is longer to a shorter period that includes dates that don't exist, like February 29th or February 30th, just keep repeating the same value. So in this case, what you're basically saying is like, okay, if I shift back from March 31st, 1 month, I'm shifting back to whatever the last day was of that month, which is in this case February 28th. Therefore, you'll see this number 1754, etc., repeated 4 times. Again, you get control. Yeah. You get control over what you want to do. Previously, in classic time intelligence, we didn't give you this control. We made this choice for you. We had this built-in notion like, oh, wait, this is the last day of the month, so we need to go back to this last day of the previous month. Or, no, this is the day before the last day of the month, so we're shifting back to some previous. Like, we made all those choices for you. Now, so you had to work with our weird choices that we made. Now it's up to you.
Less assumptions. Yep. Yeah. Like there's still like default behaviors, but it's like there's so much more overriding options, depending on what works for the business on comparatives. Yeah.
So this really this turns dates into like the actual hotbed. Like, what does it mean? You need to start asking your customer, what does it mean shifting back a month? Right. And then
I like
you need
this
to
comment.
Really
you have the power of BI.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is, right?
Yeah.
You get a lot of more control, but it also means you have to deal with that, right? Like with more power comes more responsibility. So that also means you have to be absolutely sure what your customer means when they say, I want to shift back a month. Does that mean shifting back exactly to the same day every month. Therefore, hey, if you're shifting back from March 30th to February, well, February 30th never exists, so I'm going to give you a blank then because, well, you said exact same day. Oh no, that's not what I meant. When that day doesn't exist, I just want the last value in the month. Great. You can now just configure that. You don't have to write the DAX for that. You just configure it, tell us what to do. So this is like maximum flexibility. And you can do all these kind of crazy and interesting things with calendars. So the way this works, I haven't even showed you the DAX for this guy, but I can show you. It's just on data add. You have new, and never mind the red squigglies. That's just IntelliSense that we haven't finished yet. That this will do calculate total sales, data add in Gregorian calendar -1 month, and then it says when I'm going from a shorter period to a longer period, I want you to extend, which basically means, take the extra values that you find in January and report them for the days that, February doesn't have, right? So, if it's February 28th, I want you to report all the values for until the end of the month of January, right? That's what extending allows you to do. The flip side of this would be precise, which is, don't do this. If there's like February 28th, only give me the answer for January 28th. If there's like, that's it, right? I don't want you to do anything special. I just want a real day-to-day shift between the months here, right? So that's what this would do. So I'm going to put this back to extending. And then the other parameter you have is truncation. So this means when I go from a long period to a small period, what do you want to do, right? Do you want to do blanks, which is, hey, if the date I'm shifting to does not exist, I'm going from March to February, so 29th to 31st doesn't exist in February normally, unless it's a leap year, then 29th does exist, give me a blank. Or, no, I want you to anchor to the end of the month, and I think it's anchored, actually. I want you to shift anchor to the end of the month, so that means that March 31st will actually shift to February 28th, or 29th if it's a leap year, right? So you get all this control with a simple flag, a simple change of DAX, you get the opposite behavior of what we have, all the combinations of those behaviors. So again, less built-in assumptions. We have a default, but it's way easier for you to now change that default behavior to whatever you wanted. So again, it's up to you then to decide with your customer, this is the behavior, this is what we mean when we say, let's shift back 1 month or compare this against last month. This is what we want.
Yeah, I was noticing all the just your tier functions and everything else in here. It was one of the just a couple days ago. I keep seeing the extra functions that are allowed into here, which is the calendar extensions that you mentioned to allow for that flexibility on defining the ranges and the comparatives.
Yep. Yeah. So if it's not absolutely clear, these are all calendar dependent, right? You don't get this flexibility when you're not working with calendars. You don't get these extend and anchored and precise and all those things. That doesn't exist if you just use classic time intelligence. So working with calendars means you get way more flexibility, but you also have to manage more. And then if you want to do week-based calculations built in using our time intelligence functions, you'll also have to use calendars. Those don't magically work on classic time intelligence. You'll just get an error. Just calling it out, because people have tried.
That's fair.
So yeah, that's, I think, basically everything I had to tell about calendars, which I think is a lot already.
I may switch back to us here and see if there's any extra. No, I mean, honestly, like the amount of stuff that this has, I think is going to be, I think, really good for future adoption. But it sounds like for the most part, like if you're ever making a new calendar table, similar to in the past where you should always set as a calendar table, I feel like for this one, like the new standard should be is like as soon as you have any extra columns that are a text for quarter or anything else, like you 100% should set those and define a base calendar table, even if Gregorian, because at a minimum you'll get a performance enhancement. The extra layer is like if you have customs, this is super beneficial, but like there is zero reason, it sounds like, to not set these. Basically, you should always do this if you're ever making something new. You don't have to go and fix what you have now, but like if you're ever making if you ever migrate a calendar to any new workbook at any point or setting one up, go and make those, the year, the quarter, the month, whatever those periods are, just for optimization. And then you did it once. TMDL will let you use it as many times as you need to. It's a once said and done thing. But
yes, so
yeah,
absolutely for new things, absolutely. And I think Win also said it really, really. Win Hopkins, one of the MVPs, said it really nicely. It's like it's a 10 to 30 minutes investment, and it will pay off. Like after that forever, right? You do it once, and then your whole model is perfect, right? Or if you replicate this and you do this in TMDL, blah blah, you just use it over and over and over again. It's like 30 minutes investment to once set this up. Yes, it's kind of painful. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be very careful what you did. You have to test this. But once you have it set up the way you want it, it's smooth sailing from there. It's easy. You don't have to.
Should be even faster. Like ignoring the new measures that you'll need to make. I feel like just the calendar settings themselves is 12 columns or whatever or less. Like that's probably going to take you 10-15 minutes. Yeah, it's really quick to do for the base one. The measures are, I'd say, almost to a degree of like report by report, a little more depending on who wants to look at what comparatives. But those base like table configs, like it's such an easy UI to do all of that. It sounds like there's a couple remaining things in terms of some measure time intelligence stuff that's still like probably coming in a month or two. But it is a preview feature now, so it's near production ready, but not 100%. Okay, just to make I always like to put a little asterisk anytime there's a preview, because sometimes I feel like I set this up and there's a bug. Like while it's in preview,
no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, exactly.
You're absolutely right. And I noticed, by the way, I'm also watching the YouTube comments. I noticed Poe putting something in the chat here. And I want to give a shout out to him. He's actually one of the engineers on the team. He is responsible for a large part, if not the majority. Well, maybe not the majority, because there's others as well, but a large part of how this actually works under the covers. So you have him to thank for like those parameters on date add, and the fact that we're getting a new parameter on date add and how they work and all that maximum flexibility you get there. Like these are the people that you never hear of. And I just get to share their work and share the excitement and hear the excitement from the community. But these are the people that actually make all of that stuff work. So I noticed him in the chat, so I have to give him a shout out. And there's more people, of course, involved, not just him. But he
gets some confetti. There you go.
Awesome. I hope he's happy with that.
But I think this has been fun. I honestly learned. I read the docs and I poked around it a little bit, but there was a couple of extra takeaways I even got from this on a few of the more granular, like nuanced, extra flexibilities that some of the measures have, because there's quite a toolkit that came with that. Like there's the surface level, just like table optimization, but then they're like down under the scenes. There's a lot more measure flexibility. So it's in a way, it's kind of like a modeling feature and like a DAX feature kind of wrapped in one, because like they're both have been updated for this for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that's exactly right. Right, we have a new UI, we have new tricks in the engine, new functions have been introduced, whole bunch of new stuff. I think it's really cool, and it removes all this kind of, because when we started looking into this, we actually look back at like old notes of like, how did we even end up with the classic behavior of like shifting back, right? Because this problem is not new. Shifting back a month in Gregorian calendars always has been troublesome, right? We made a choice years ago to do a certain behavior. It was interesting to see us revisiting those choices and going like, well, why did we actually make this choice? Because it feels counterintuitive. Well, yeah, and in the end, somebody just said, somebody had to make a call, so I just took the call, like whatever, right? It's like, yeah, we made a choice. We had to make one choice. Is it the best choice? Maybe, I don't know, but we had to make a choice to move forward, and we lived with it forever. Now we revisited all of that and went like, no, okay, it's okay that we make that choice, but we also give you the opposite, right? So you now are in control. So that's essentially the improvement over this, is going like, hey, we shouldn't be the ones choosing for you. We should give you the options to choose yourself.
I mean, and of all the dimension tables you'd ever build in Power BI, the most bespoke one, like universally, is always going to be the calendar or date table. That this has been built.
It's true. So, because we don't, as a species, humans on the planet, we don't even agree on when a week starts. So
Oh yeah, is it Sunday or Monday?
Yeah. Or whatever, Friday. right? I don't know. It depends really on how you think about the world. And so it's really tough as a product to cater to all these people around the world if you have built-in assumptions that you made, for example, from a US perspective. And we had all of those assumptions in the product. And now we still have them because we have a default behavior, but we also give you the flexibility to change whatever, right? So if you don't want to have 52 weeks in a year, you want 140 weeks in a year, well, I mean, go for it. You want 42 weeks in a year? I mean, that's a better number, of course, 42 in general. Go for it, right? You can do it.
No, yeah, like I like that you have the Power BI. I think that's a good quote.
I should have had this as a tagline in the feature. I might be stealing that.
There you go. The best ideas are the borrowed ones.
Oh yeah, or the stolen ones. Yes, for sure.
Exactly. I did drop a link to the SQL BI article that's just talks about TMDL. Is there any other ones that you'd recommend as essentially any final takeaways of like articles, references, people to dig into this, get their teeth into it a little bit more?
Well, I mean, SQL BI and other MVPs always are good sources, right? And SQL BI folks, of course, like Marco and Alberto, we meet with them regularly. They kind of like, well, co-develop is a strong word, but in particularly for these type of features, we communicate with them to make sure that we're on the right track, right? We use them as a sounding board more than for other features maybe. So definitely those would be good sources, and I think any of the MVPs out there, in the DAX world, are great sources. There's also, of course, our own documentation, of which I'm really proud, which Boe had a big hand in as well, and myself. So we have like a extensive documentation on time intelligence in Power BI, comparing all the various options with updated guidance of like, hey, essentially in line of what we said here, Reed, like if you're starting new, don't do classic time intelligence. We call it classic for a reason.
Yeah.
Just go use the new ones, right? So that's
so for the link for that, like I have in the description the blog that talks about the new stuff. Is there a specific Microsoft Learn article or anything? I was trying to just look for it now, but I wasn't able to find it.
It's aka.ms/Power BI-calendar-TI-docs.
AKMS Power BI calendar. And then what was the last one?
Paste it into the chat.
Yeah, just paste it into the chat. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. That's the docs. And then the blog you already linked also has a short link, which is the same, but then blog.
Was that our chat? It unless you're a moderator, it will delete it from YouTube. So say hi. I'll make you a moderator, and then you can immediately paste it. Yeah, it's just to prevent spam essentially in YouTube. So I usually make the speakers a little moderator in the there we go. All right, so now I'm gonna go and
that's weird. I'm learning new stuff here today.
There you go. Yeah, add as moderator. You're going to be standing. It also means you can put people in timeout now if you're ever just hanging out.
Oh, that's nice. I like it. Can I put Poe in timeout?
You can now.
Oh yeah, I see. No, I won't do that to him.
There you go. Now you should be able to paste.
Okay. Let me try. So, blog and.
Yep. Ta-da.
I'm now getting a moderator pop-up thingy. Great. Yep. And then docs as well. So if you want to learn more about any of these, you can find those sources, and of course SQL BI as well. YouTube. I did a long interview with Marco at FabCon Live in Vienna when we just launched both of these features, like calendars and UDFs. That's also worth watching. I think, if not only for like seeing an interruption from a coworker of mine, because we were live in the hallway, of course, very risky. So she saw us and was like, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" We're like, "Well, we're recording."
Nice.
So all that good jazz is in there. We had to like cut it out, and Marco did a good job of making it look good. But that's also a good conversation to watch, just from like both a user / a developer, from my perspective, like as a product owner, like, hey, why did we do this? Why do we care about this? I think in general, both features are very exciting for the DAX world. And yeah, I think that's about it. I think we made made a bet, Marco and I, or he predicted that calendars would be getting a higher uptake quicker than UDFs. And in fact, the reverse is true in our telemetry. We see UDFs taking off like a rocket.
And like, yeah, exactly. But I'd like give it 18 months because UDFs will be nice, but like in 5 years, every well-built calendar table will be configured with this new feature.
Yes.
I'd only say like my guess, if I just were to ballpark, like what percentage of models will be using UDFs, even from pro developers, like 30 to 50%. But like, you only need those if there's repeatable patterns that make sense, right? Those are a nice to have. This is a need to have for model design. I mean,
yeah. So to borrow a phrase from Marco, is like there is a semantic model development before and after September 2025. So if I see models brand new created after September 2025, they don't include a calendar, you did it wrong, right? So, if you see a model in, let's say, I don't know, 2030, and you see somebody still used classic time intelligence, they weren't paying attention because they shouldn't be doing that anymore.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, it's exciting to work on this, and it's exciting to, help the community move forward with DAX and make it a little bit easier and more powerful at the same time. So yeah, can I do one more shameless plug?
Oh, please. Be extra shameless with it, though.
So there's a little social media called Reddit, and we're doing an AMA with the inventors of DAX, Jeffrey Wang and Marius Dumitru, on Reddit, 14th of November. Yes, at 11 a.m. PST, which is 7 p.m. UTC.
Feel free to drop the link to the. If the thread's already there, drop the link into that. Speaking of Jeffrey, I had training a large client earlier this week on site, and one of the engineers on the team that had a DAX problem was like, oh yeah, so I ended up talking to Marco at a conference, and he connected me with some engineer at Microsoft who helped me out a bit. And he's like, hold on, let me look at the name. Like, oh yeah, this guy named Jeffrey Wang, who I like, so you understand who you spoke to, right? Like, no, like that's for all intents and purposes invented DAX. Like you didn't talk to some engineer. If you were to have any DAX problem, there is no further upstream than that person.
That's the person that Marco, Alberto, myself, everybody else go to, right?
I just love that he was able to get passed up to somebody who could help him with something, but not even realizing like who he had been talking to. It was sweet. Yeah.
No, it's very cool, and I'm looking forward to spending time with the Reddit community there for an hour. I'll have both inventors or godfathers of DAX there, so both Jeffrey as well as Marius. So like all the brains around DAX there that work at are like, that's where the buck stops, right? Essentially, as you said, like there's no higher level than that. And then myself as like a servant, not knowing anything really about DAX, just maybe answering some functional or future questions like, hey, where do you think this is headed? But so yeah, please join us there as well to ask whatever you wanted to ask about DAX. And get their unfiltered, honest opinion. So sorry for the plug on your channel.
So two things that I'll close off with. One, I'll recommend anybody watching this. Like, Jeffrey is wonderful. Like every time I ever ask him, because he's been on my live stream 2 or 3 times now, usually around Christmas, but he's always so enthusiastic and excited just to come, and he's like, he loves that people want to like get nerdy with DAX. So I appreciate the personality on top of the knowledge.
Absolutely.
The only other thing I'll mention, the other one's Marius, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So as a little nudge to you, he's not been ever on a live stream. If he's ever interested and you want to like throw a word, I'd love to get him on sometime to talk about it. I need my Pokemon card collection, of all the cool people at Microsoft.
Well, Marius is interesting person because he is the driving power behind basically, I would say, everything in the engine. So everything related to pro-related features like DAX, but also how AS works, Direct Lake, optimizations that are happening there against, like, for example, all the, what's the word, delta tables, things like that. It's like, this is all Marius. That's all him.
Okay.
You will never see him at a conference. You will never hear him speak anywhere. He's just not that kind of person. He doesn't like that. But he's amazing. He's an amazing, like, architect and technical person. Yep. And he just, but he doesn't like being in the limelight. Jeffrey is slightly different. Jeffrey likes being invited to, things like this, and goes like, oh yeah, sure, cool, an opportunity to talk to users and share my knowledge, and like, not to be on a stage, not like to get attention, but just to nerd out. That's what drives him there. So, but Marius just doesn't like doing that, at least so far. So who knows? But it would be a unique moment, Reed, if you get him to be on the live stream, because it hasn't happened.
Just be like, hey Jeff, you got to tell him how fun it was to be on Reed's stream. You should go sometime.
I mean,
I'll even wear my cape.
Exactly. One thing I really like about Jeffrey is, actually, we took him to, or he joined us in FabCon Vegas, I think in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And he was at Ask the Experts, so he was hidden behind a curtain. And he had one table assigned to him to, like, do DAX things. And he was originally just there for like a morning or 2 mornings in the whole conference. He sat down, he never left. And in the end, he had like 3 tables with DAX questions circling around him. Nice. And so I put myself up as the doorman. So then, I tried to answer the question, but if the question was really hard, I just put them in the queue for Jeffrey. And then afterwards, I kind of went up to Jeffrey and I kind of apologized for, like, hey, we kept you here for such a long time. It must be annoying, blah, blah, blah. He was like, no, I had the best time ever, because this was great. I just get to, like, work on DAX problems all day. This was awesome.
Well, and there's a degree of, I think, people like you and me, we enjoy solving problems. So there's, I get like a little bored if I'm doing too much management or business development or other stuff, and like, give me something where my brain has to like round peg in a square hole type thing. Like, let me get inventive to solve a logic puzzle, and like there's something like satisfying about that I think like other parts of a job don't do, which is why it sounds like Jeffrey, because he's one of the few principal partners or senior partners at that level who still does development. Most people, when they move up to that level, stop doing that. They just manage. But he's like, no, I want to build. He likes to build.
No, yeah. In fact, he still writes code. And
that's what I mean. He continues to be like directly coding, helping to code the modifications and enhancements in the engine. Yeah.
No, and this also brings up something that the first time that you asked me to ask Jeffrey if he wanted to come to your live stream, I told him, like, dude, this person has a live stream. Do you know him? Yeah, I heard about it. I watched it once or twice. Okay, great. He wants you to be a guest. And he was like, well, really? I'm like, yes. you don't understand how much these people look up to you.
Yeah.
And then he said, like, well, you can just shoot me an email. It's like, no, Jeffrey, these people are, well, scared of reaching out to you. It's like, they look up to you. So, you don't understand the position you have in this industry, in this community, where people go like, well, if Jeffrey talks, we listen, right? So
he's very humble.
He's extremely humble, and it's very cool to see people at that level, and Marius as well, and others at Power BI that are just wicked smart, and everybody else just looks up to them. And they're so humble and so human, and you can just approach them and go like, hey, I don't get it, and it will make time. And even stupid questions get answered, and that's not always the case with people on that level. Absolutely not.
No, I agree. Raise up in your position with your skill level, but not necessarily your ego.
Yeah. And so I really appreciate that about those people that work, and our community at large, I think is similar like that overall. It's like, and I enjoy that about our community. The fact that, yes, we all have knowledge. Yes, we are experts in certain area, whatever, but we're still human, and we can still, we're not like going like, no, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
Right. So
fair.
It's great. Let's please keep doing that. So,
absolutely.
Okay. goal for you is to get Marius on the live stream. I don't give you a lot of chance, but we can make a bet on it. Let's see.
Yeah, like it's it's one of those. Each time you ask, there's all like, okay, maybe like you got to slowly inch your way to victory. Yeah.
Hey,
plant the worm today, and then maybe in 3 years I'll get him on.
Hey, we have the AMA with him coming up, which is
That's
I think
true.
the first public thing that he's doing. So we're opening the door.
This is exactly a little bit of lights coming in.
Cool. Sounds
perfect. But yeah, with this, then I again thank you so much for coming on again to talk about this really cool feature that again is going to be a cornerstone of all like modeling updates for this. So I think it was a great both high level and kind of deep dive discussion on just how flexible this will be. So hopefully it gives people an opportunity to realize there's an extra 12 tools in their toolbox as they're building out this stuff. Yeah, otherwise, I'll wish you a good Friday and a happy Halloween as well. And then I'm looking forward to getting you back on and running into you at some conference here in the near future, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll see each other around. And thanks for having me again. Always a pleasure. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the day and go build some calendars, I would say.
Exactly. You have the Power BI.
Yes, exactly. You have the Power BI.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.